Good morning, you guys. Dr. B here with the Wednesday edition of Coffee Talk, and it has been a productive morning so far. I had to get started with a new client to go through their nutrition as they're on their way to their to improving their health. Today's coffee cup is actually a gift from my father-in-law. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, but it is getting used, and I'm going to keep it around because if for some reason in a few years I forget who I am, I've got it right there. Uh, so thinking about this, anytime I grab that cup, I do think about my father-in-law. And one of the things that is really important in it is to have people in your life that you admire and that you look up to. And so I'm going to share with you guys a little story. One thing that I will tell you is a quote that I learned a long time ago, and I will share these quotes with you guys because, again, I'm not a smart guy, but I have met and been around a lot of smart people. And so the quote is, how you do one thing is actually how you do everything. Let me repeat that to you. How you do one thing is actually how you do everything. And I learned this a long time ago. And what I mean by that, and what I mean by that quote, is that if you cheat on your taxes, you will cheat in other areas of your life. If you allow weeds to grow in your yard, and if you don't keep your landscape tidy, your bushes trimmed, all of those things, you will allow unloose or untied or unorganized things to fester in your personal life, and they will blur the lines between business and actually personal. And so the reason I say that for you, and the reason it's so important to understand that, is how you do one thing is how you do everything. And this is crucial because I spent a big portion of my career coaching other docs. And one thing that I always realize is that not everybody will do what it takes. And I can't tell you how many doctors want to grow their business, but they don't want to work more than 25 hours a week. And it is not realistic. So when we talk about that, you've got to know what it takes to manage a 25-hour a week schedule to be productive in all 25 of those hours so that you can make your production count. And newer docs don't necessarily have it down. They need more time in the box. They need more time in front of people to be successful in learning the systems and the SOPs to make that be successful. But back to my father-in-law. When Des and I first met, he had given her a picture, and I'm not sure that he'll remember this. So if you watch this, Jim, this had a profound impact on my life. And it was a picture, and it was a dock, and it had two loops on the dock, or I don't know what they're called, but where you tie up your boat. And then it had one that was super messy and all tied up. And then the one just to the right of that was neatly tied, and it has a nice wound circle of all the rope. So one looks very disheveled and disorganized, and one looks very, very organized and tidy. Now, I will share a picture in the comments of what I'm talking about when you guys see this. And it didn't really connect with me at that point because I spent my time growing up in Alabama on the Alabama River. So we did a lot of fishing, we did some water skiing, some boating, but I never spent time really having to tie up a boat. When we sold Back to Health a few years ago, probably if not the best trip I've ever been on, or one of the best trips, was with Justin and Christy Nye, and then Dr. Dane and his wife Jill, two of my most favorite couples and some of the people that have had the most profound impact on my life. They've spent a lot of time boating. We had a chance to rent a catamaran and go to the BVI, the British Virgin Islands, and spend, it was either 8 or 9 days of just cruising around and tying up and snorkeling and having a blast and making memories. And that truly was such a special occasion. But one thing that I noticed on that trip, Dr. Dane, we had the fortune before that to actually spend a couple of 4th of July weekends with him and also the Nyes in Rock Hall, Maryland on the Chesapeake, where he had a big boat and we would go out. So he spent a lot of time on the water, and Dr. Justin lives on a lake. But every time we would go somewhere, and every time we would tie up our dinghy, every time we would tie up our boat, we stayed in a marina one night, and then they tie up the boat, and it would always be a certain way, super, super organized, wind up all the extra rope so that it doesn't become a trip hazard and therefore it doesn't get knotted and it doesn't get tangled. Okay, so I'm sharing that with you because this was a profound example. When you do things haphazardly and you take shortcuts, it always leads to more work in the long run. So remember, I said how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so if you get up and you don't plan your day and you don't have a set schedule, it's going to be very hard for you to be efficient because you never have the same hours in the day. So one of the first things that I talk to people about when it comes to getting healthy is when we talk about exercise, well, when are you exercising this week? Because you guys have heard me say that gets scheduled gets done. And if you're not getting up at the same time of day, it's hard for you to manage the hours in your day. This guy right here, I get up at 4 a.m. every day. And I'm not saying that to brag. That's just my body needs about 7 to 7.5 hours of sleep. I'm in bed every night, generally by 9 o'clock. And so at 4 o'clock, I wake up with or without an alarm. I generally have an hour to an hour and a half to myself, whether that be prayer time, check email, and then I usually exercise at, I'll be ready to leave my house around 5:30, and then we exercise from 6 to 7. That is what works for me. Okay, so in wrapping this up and sharing this with you, I want to challenge you to really think about your health. And when we talk about our health, I want you to think about your personal life. If you have a job, you know your work schedule if you work for somebody else, meaning you have to report in at 8, you get off at 5. If you have a remote job, you have to log on at a certain time, you get to log out at a certain time. All of that stuff is planned for you. But when it comes to your health, you and only you are in charge of you. It's a beautiful thing and it's a curse at the same time. So you've got to plan your meals. You have to plan your workouts. You have to plan to take your supplementation. You have to plan to drink your water. All of these things happen not by chance, but by personal choice. And so my challenge for you is get organized in your life. And if you need help, whether it's physical tools, whether it is podcasts, whether it is webinars, please ask. I can share some things that have been highly beneficial for me. And I just had that thought drinking out of this coffee cup today with my father-in-law in that one picture. And it's interesting how God puts things in your path that show up repeatedly. And one thing that I can say, I've said this a lot, and you guys have probably heard me say, is that I know a lot because I failed a lot. And so I say that with a laugh because every time I do something, much like Thomas Edison inventing the light bulb, I figure out how not to do it and I learn the lesson. Very rarely will I make the same mistake twice. So that is your Wednesday edition of Coffee Talk. Hope you guys found it helpful and beneficial. Just want you to know it's a great day to have a great day. So until tomorrow, be blessed. We'll see you soon.